cash, card, credit, or debit, personal checks up to a certain limit. The euro, the pound, the peso, the franc, rupees and rubles, transfers from the bank. I like the shekels, the balloons, silver and gold, stocks and bonds and treasury notes. I mean, the Washington, Lincoln, Hamilton, and Jackson, Ulysses S. Grant, Mr. Benjamin Franklin on the Silk Road. I wanna find my pot of gold. I find it on the Silk Road. I won't leave my money at home. Take it to the Silk Road. If I jump in the light my load, I buy it on the Silk Road. On the Silk Road. The Silk Road. Silk Road. Silk Road.
All right, Sputoola, that was Silk Road. That is, I think, the loudest music I've heard in a long time.
Thank you.
I think you're the first full band we've had in here since COVID, so
Oh, wow.
it's not something I've been used to,
It's really quiet.
right?
Are the interns not allowed to make?
No noise
Any
at all.
noise?
No,
Okay.
not allowed.
That's awesome.
The-
They're
the-
so
Part of the
well
contract.
behaved, yeah.
So yeah, we'd like to go around and introduce yourselves.
Awesome. I'm Seth.
I'm Ian.
Gotta speak up, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
I'm JJ.
Well,
Sputoola.
lovely to have you in the studio. So tell us a little bit about your history. Where are you guys from? When did you form?
Yeah, I was thinking about this today actually. If I was pressed, I think our history goes back before I was born. Probably don't need to go back that far. But Ian on my left here actually met before we were born. Our mother's friends while we were in the womb. So
Wow.
kind of goes back that far. But in all honesty, we sort of started in this form in 2018. We had played a couple of gigs without JJ 2017, and it wasn't working. So we went out searching for him. And luckily we found him just a few cubicles away from Ian at All Scripts.
Cool. And so, your first album was Pale Blue Dot. Was that pre or post JJ?
Yeah, that was unfortunately pre JJ, and you can hear it if you listen. There are some organs on that single, but they're miserable.
So did you have an idea that you really needed organs, or that was missing, and that was kind of the key element of the band, or was it kind of more of a general sense that there was a puzzle piece that wasn't there?
Yeah, definitely a bit of a puzzle piece missing. We spent a brief amount of time playing with a second guitarist, which I think would have worked out great, except I have this huge ego playing rock music. I need to be the only one playing guitar. And actually, that's a big part of the reason I started this band. I was playing keyboard in another group that is now thankfully defunct. We used to practice in Lake Placid, and it was this insanely long drive. But yeah, I mean, even recording Pale Blue Dot, we were looking just for a lot more texture in our music, a lot of different sounds. I love the sound of a rock band, but that's almost like not quite enough for some of the stories I wanted to tell with the music. So,
would you describe yourselves as jam rock?
I always have
it's been
difficulty
loaded
answering
term.
that question when people ask me. It's funny like that.
What do you say, Jake?
I feel like it's different every time. Like a hodgepodge of psychedelic, jazzy funk. Like just all the
Isn't
stuff you see on like
Yeah.
It's a hodgepodge of psychedelic jazzy punk, just a jam band though. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's
That's probably what I should say from now on.
My sole defense is we don't always succeed, but we attempt not to subject our audience to too many 20-minute guitar solos.
Right.
Big as my ego is, I don't
Not
think
too
I could fill.
3 or 4 per night
Yeah,
only.
exactly.
So after Pale Blue Dot, obviously you felt there was something missing, and you've come out with the second album, uh, this past summer, or did it come out a little bit later than that?
Officially, the release is today.
It's today.
Today.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. So we took a lot of time off in 2019 to record this. We didn't play nearly as many gigs as we had in the previous year. Built a whole recording studio sort of thing in my basement where we practice, and finally took it to Tank Recording at the end of 2019 for final mix and master. And loved the quality that came out, and we were starting to plan this big release party in the spring. But then the spring turned out to not be such a good time for release parties.
Yeah,
So,
of course.
we
But
kinda
tell me a
felt
little bit more about the whole home studio that you decided to build in the basement. So
Yeah.
what was the impetus for that? Was it that you just recording a studio costs a lot of money, or is it do you have like a big passion for recording and mixing yourself?
Yeah, both. A big part of it was time. So a lot of the things that we did on this record, I don't think we could have really done on the studio kind of burning money budget. So there's like a lot of cool exploratory sounds we were working with JJ, adding cool synthesizer parts. I don't think we would have gotten around to it if we were um, paying a full studio rate for the whole thing. We could do these late night sort of exploratory sessions, and I've always really liked that part of making music. Is just not really knowing where you're going to arrive at the end of the day. So it's part of the improvisational nature, I think, of playing live, like trying to improvise a little bit in the studio too.
Yeah, of course. And other than being able to have room to breathe, have that kind of space to go in different directions and see where it goes. What else did you change based on your experience recording your first album? Was there anything that you kind of took away and like, this is what I'm going to try and tweak? And is there anything that you kept from that first recording while going into the studio for a second album?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one of the things I took away from our first recording session in a studio, it's funny thinking back to this, we recorded like 5 songs in like one day and weren't really that happy with any of them at the end of the day. So we end up going back into the studio weeks later to just record a single, which became Pale Blue Dot. And I guess my big takeaway and what I would recommend to any aspiring recording artists is do a lot of pre-production. Really, it's one thing to know the song, know the arrangement, know the chords and stuff, but really to know what you're going to play in every single bar and every single sound that you eventually want in the recording. That's a huge step that I think I neglected in the first iteration of our recording life. And when we started to record Sputoola, self-titled album, we actually did a ton of like what I would call pre-production. We tried out like 15 different songs, only ended up with 6 at the end of the day, and really leaned into like what is the specific part that's going to be played, and like even just this 10 seconds of what's the drum fill going to be here, and can it be the same every time? What's the guitar solo going to be, and can it really find its place in the mix? So that's something you think you play with the band, you can just show up in the studio and play, but if you haven't really done your homework, then you can waste a lot of time.
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned that you were kind of really happy about the space you had in order to be able to improvise, but then it sounds like there's improvisation, but then you're still coming to the studio with a very exact idea of what's going where. So how do those two ideas both mesh?
Yeah. I think that's kind of the conundrum of our band, right? It's sort of like there might be a very jammy sound to a lot of things we play, but a lot of it is actually pretty heavily curated and orchestrated and arranged. And you leave this very small space open for where you can sort of make stuff up, and then that's where the magic happens. If you make up the whole thing, you get this kind of nonsense. That's right. Not super. And I think we've all heard nonsense out there live. And a lot of the good improvisation is actually just having in a really narrow band. I think that's one of the things I went to like a meet and greet with Bela Fleck, who's one of my big influences. And he said, like, sometimes the most complicated music you can't improvise over it at all because there's no, there's none of that like critical bandwidth where you can play around with. And he actually likes playing a lot simpler stuff because there's a much bigger threshold for where you can play around with it. So I think that sort of answers the question. It's
Yeah.
like,
Oh no, for sure. Well, I would love to hear another song. One off the new album.
Yeah.
So what have you got for us?
this one is called Brass Tacks. Put my honey pot in my nest egg. Got the bee's knees on my long leg. Had to do it all the hard way, 'cause I'm an average Joe on a Monday. When they ask me why, I don't know what to say. I put my nose to the grindstone and I try and get paid. I took a long walk off the short pier. I heard the swan song in my deaf ear. Wild eyes that I looked through to see a million things that I could do. So I'll get yours and you'll get mine, as long as we get there before I run out of time. Tell them all that I made some money working for the man. Well, you gotta wear a little shoe shine, honey, when you got a plan. When I finally get down to the brass tacks, I smoke a cigar and I try and relax. Tell them all that I made some money working for the man. Tell them all that I built an empire with my own two hands. When I finally get down to the brass tacks, play my guitar, I play my guitar.
by Sputoola there. So with the new album, or generally with the songs, do you find yourself looking at a common theme, or is it kind of like a thread of ideas that you kind of building on, or is it more of a mishmash of ideas and events and just thoughts that go through your head?
Yeah, I was worried about this question. No, yeah. So I think for me, I do most of the lyric writing and stuff. This particular collection of songs ended up being a bit of my like, inward journey through my like adolescent psychology, I think. Yeah, it kind of goes through some stages of like spiritual disillusionment until the last and final song, which I think we're going to play at the end, which is sort of this moment of spiritual awakening for me, which was actually the death of a close friend. So the album became is definitely kind of a very meaningful, like, personal journey. The first song is like called Holy Roller. It's sort of this tongue-in-cheek play on this like Christ narrative and sort of a irreverent way of looking back at being like raised as a fundamentalist Christian. And then Silk Road, which we played at the beginning, is like this kind of disillusionment of black market capitalism or something like that. Just total hedonistic, get rich quick kind of vibe. And then Brass Tacks, I'm skipping over one of the songs, but Brass Tacks, which we just played, is kind of this dealing with this kind of like workaday kind of life that everyone lives, and how to find a space in that to express yourself, and is that enough, to survive the mundane modernity. But yeah, definitely a lot of like personal interweaving stories for me. I don't know if when people listen to it, they'll be able to take any of that away, because it is personal and cryptic, but there you have it.
Was this a personal journey for you that you find yourself on in the last couple of years, that you decided to build an album around, or is this more of a concept?
No, yeah, it's definitely, I think, retroactive or retrospective. So when we started talking about doing this album, again, we started with like 15 different songs that we'd been playing. Could these all go on it? And we recorded all of those to some kind of rudimentary level, and we took a step back and said, what are the real core songs that we want to go on here? And I think one of the reasons I curated this selection was because they were all of these sort of reflections on this like early kind of journey into the self that I was looking at. Probably the next albums will be about the much cooler stuff that I've gotten into since adolescence.
I think a spiritual awakening is pretty cool, if I'm honest with you. So in terms of writing, especially in this last 6 months, year, since COVID, how's that been for you in terms of as a creative, and that kind of goes for the rest of the band as well? Have you found this space to be more useful in terms of your own creative output and your own development, or have you found it suffocating because you've got no to bounce things off people and you don't have that kind of ability to do anything in front of an audience? So yeah, I'm just open the floor for this one.
Yeah, I guess in the beginning it was really tough, but because back then everything was just up in the air, like, oh, what's happening, the shelves are empty, so we kind of took a hiatus from just playing together for a while, but we did try to, in the beginning, we really kept up with like virtual practice, and that was great, because I think without that I would have lost my mind, or at least lost it a lot quicker. And so that was a great way to kind of flex those muscles. But I think just outside of that, just when you don't have as much of a chance to get out and just like stimulate your senses, I guess I feel like that's sort of made my own creativity shrivel a bit. But I'm not the only person I've heard who said that too. I've like heard other folks kind of intimate the same thing. But but since then we got back together, and it's sort of it's a bummer that like we missed the whole summer and couldn't really play gigs. That was pretty brutal. But in lieu of that, we learned a lot of new material, which I also find pretty gratifying. And like you just have like so much stuff that keeps coming out, and it's all great, and love learning it. So
Yeah, we did try and
fun
write
exercise.
a song in total isolation from each other. It's we put it up on YouTube. It's called Isolated Together. And it's a song about trying to cope with the lack of real socialization. But we actually recorded it by sending each other MP3s and then playing along and then mixing it together. So we found this is kind of funny, but we actually didn't really know how to play the song together when we came back, and maybe we'll play this live one day. And so that was an interesting thing to learn, that you don't actually without actually being in the same room with the other members, like actually learning the song so you could perform it doesn't happen as well. Versus just passing around a track and like taking your one take and layering it on top and saying, okay, now I can. It's like almost like a multiple choice test. You like just fill in the bubbles and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. not worry about that subject until the next time I get tested on it.
They're kind of playing off each other and that immediate feedback, and that delayed, or at least the delayed feedback means you're in maybe a different headspace or in a different kind of place for yourself to make music based on that, and I can see it falling apart pretty quickly.
Yeah, something about just how memory works too. I feel like that when you record things, you don't feel like you need to store them in your head anymore. So that like when we play together, we're not really recording anything. The only place that it survives is in our minds.
Right.
So I don't know if that's related.
And Ian, how about you? How's this experience been for you as a musician? And have you found it beneficial, or has it been difficult, or maybe probably most likely a bit of both?
I definitely say it's been difficult. I got into bass because I like to play with my friends. Everyone was a guitar player, but they needed bass players. So being with my friends is kind of a core part of playing bass for me. And when we stopped even going to practice, it's always been our weekly thing. Every Tuesday we have practice. It's our outlet. You can see how you're doing for the week. Seth's got a crazy solo. He's really got something on his mind this week. You can just tell from our weekly band practice. And we took a hiatus for almost 2 months or more there. And it's just weird not to have that, in our life. It's been such an integral part for years.
Yeah. And what's your plan going back into winter? Are you guys all part of the same pod now? Are you the practice is back on?
Oh yeah, definitely. Ever since our wives and girlfriends have been comfortable with it, we've been practicing again together. We all work from home, so that it's definitely like a privilege that makes that more possible than sure people in other situations. And we also have a band retreat planned later this year. We're gonna we rented this cabin in the woods, and we're gonna just load in the instruments and see what happens over a long weekend. So look forward to that.
That's awesome. Are you planning to bring like recording equipment up for that? And
yeah, I think
do like
so.
a semi-live album?
I think part of my vision is to kind of demo the second album with everything delayed. I mean, we've got tons, like 30, 40 songs of material that, we just need to get around to getting out in the world. So now that the first album is released, we're like immediately going to work on the second.
Yeah, for sure. And finally, so the new album is out today, self-titled Sputoola by Sputoola. It's because we're in the situation we're in. How are you promoting this aside from coming on Big Heavy?
We are also playing our first truly live public event since February this weekend. It's an outdoor event, so there are not many of those left this year. It's at the Double E, the Essex Experience, and it's part of an event called Out and About in Essex, I think. So they're having like 16 different performances throughout the weekend. We're one of them. We're playing at the Double E Saturday, 5 p.m. for a couple of hours. So really excited about that. And other than that, that's our big promotion plan so far.
Hey, that's certainly more than a lot of people that have come in here promoting new albums have been able to boast. And if people want to listen to the new album or just find out more about you, where would they go?
Yeah, you can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Sputoola.com. And the new album's on Bandcamp now, but it'll be on all the major streaming services in the weeks to come. And it's really easy to spell, Sputoola. And it's pretty much the only thing you'll find on the internet with that combination of letters. So
there we go. Hence why you got Sputoola.com.
yeah, exactly.
Well, it's been absolutely fantastic having you guys in. We would love to hear one last song before you guys leave.
Cool. Yeah, this is Smoke and Steam. I think I'd like to dedicate this one, even though I wrote about a personal loss that I have. We have a saxophone player we play with named Dan Matlack, and he's going through a family tragedy, and so he couldn't be here today. So I'd just like to dedicate this to Dan, and we're thinking about you, man. Mind now, I've got a weightless soul and a heavy heart. I've got these twitching muscles, and when they are fatigued, I lay my body down. Then when I wake in the morning, the sun is all ablaze in my weary eyes. I take a breath of the fresh air. A little smoke and steam might clear things out. It's like a call from the wild. It's like the gospel told from a liar's mouth. In that moment of clarity, you hear a cynical laughter as the chaos unfolds. When the dust finally settles, you see your fair little city was a battleground, war for humanity. All that smoke and steam was just a Trojan horse. shadows, shadows, to see our naked truth in the light of day. We must have waited far too long, too long. 'Cause on that misty morn we laid his body down. Thanks for having us, Tom.
No worries. That was Smoke and Steam by Sputoola. Thank you guys so much for coming to the studio this evening.
Tom.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Next week, come back, listen. We've got Patrick J. Crowley in the studio. That'll be on the Rocket Shop at 8 o'clock. This has been 105.9 The Radiator. It's been the Rocket Shop. I've been your host, Tom Proctor, and good night.